Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very empowering show coming right up with special guest Heather Grzych, and she's here today to share with us her new book, The Ayurvedic Guide to Fertility, a natural approach to getting pregnant. As a board-certified Ayurvedic practitioner, Heather bridges the worlds of conventional and alternative medicine to help women and men heal their physical and emotional lives. Heather is on the board of directors for the National Ayurvedic Medical Association and has consulted with doctors, governments, and insurance companies. So let's welcome to the show, Heather Grzych.
Thank you so much, Marianne.
You know, what a joy it is to have you here and to talk about this book. My goodness, it just came out. You've got to be so excited.
I'm really excited. It really feels like it's been coming for a long time, and it's always been a dream of mine to write a book. And I just feel really grateful that everything aligned for it to happen.
Oh my goodness. Books are such a journey. And I'd love for you to share with us, what inspired you to follow this path?
Wow. There's the path to the book, and then there's the path to my finding Ayurveda, which I guess comes before the book. The book being the Ayurvedic Guide to Fertility. When I first heard about Ayurveda, I was in my 30s, and I was working for a health insurance company. I was teaching yoga as a side hustle, so to speak, and I found Ayurveda not only improved my health, but it taught me how to be a human again. Everything about it felt like I was reconnecting with a lost part of myself. So I was just a regular girl. I had the kind of good job and the good, life, everything. But something about when I discovered Ayurveda really made me realize that I was missing a deeper connection with the deepest parts of myself. So when I found Ayurveda, I tried a couple of the practices to reduce, the heartburn I was struggling with at the time. And then after that worked, I went through various Ayurvedic cleansing treatments. And after all of that, I felt better than I did in my 20s. And I also found that my whole life experience changed. So the way that I processed emotions, the way that I related to people, the choices that I made about my career, when I really realized what was important to me after kind of clearing out my life, my system, all of these things. And I had great teachers along the way. So it wasn't easy for me to switch my career to come onto this path to study Ayurveda, to get to this place where I was, this book came from me and is now coming into the world. So it wasn't easy for me to get there. I considered going back to school to study something more practical because I was always a practical girl. And, I looked at other licensed healthcare professions because Ayurveda is not actually a licensed practice in the US. So I was like, okay, let me do something practical. But for some reason, I just couldn't get away from Ayurveda. It just kept pulling on my heart. And I knew I just have to do something impractical right now. I have to follow the dream. So when I started graduate school to study Ayurveda, my parents actually thought I'd join a cult because they'd never heard of it. And that was kind of tricky to navigate. You could see that I was fighting a lot of my social programming to pursue this passion. And then the book came as a natural. I always wanted to write a book. And in fact, when I started to go to Ayurveda school, I always knew that it would lead me to write a book. I remember on my questionnaire that I had to fill out the first week of school, or, for applying to school, I think I have to do this to be a better writer. So it's interesting. I can't say that I had a plan in my life, like I must do this, but it's these little images and visions all emerging and kind of starting to come together.
Oh my goodness. Well, and so for our listeners that are new to Ayurveda, why don't you share a little bit about what that is? Because I think a lot of people do get really confused by it. They think, oh, like how you're saying, it's like, oh, it's a cult, or, there's these weird, stereotypes that go with it.
Yeah. So Ayurveda, it's a holistic lifestyle medicine. It's a system of self-care. It comes from India. It's been around for thousands of years. It's, in India, there are hundreds of thousands of Ayurvedic doctors that practice in India. So it's a really big part of the fabric there. But, where I live in the United States, there's only a couple thousand of us who practice this. So it's a little unfamiliar for some people. And what we do is we seek to cure the emotional, the environmental, and the behavioral aspects of health. So I like to look at it as learning how to garden, except instead of you're gardening with seeds, you're the plant in this case. So you're learning how your body's like a plant in the different environments that work well with you. So it teaches a person how to live in line with the cycles of nature, including changes in climate and season. It teaches people how to eat, live, work, and love according to their very specific mind-body constitution, which I can talk about as well, because I think you were alluding to the different types that a lot of people know about with Ayurveda. And I definitely want to talk about that in our time together. Mm-hmm. The Ayurveda actually literally means the knowledge of life. And that's the definition of that Sanskrit word. And it's often referred to as the mother of all healing because it's influenced so many systems of medicine in the world, including Chinese medicine even. In fact, the Marma points and Marma therapy in Ayurveda is what influenced acupuncture to become a system in China.
Well, that's fascinating how that all comes together, So, can you share with us why so many women are having such a difficult time becoming pregnant today?
Yeah. Obviously, it's very individual. Each woman is going to have her own journey with that. But there's a couple different things. There's this mental desire, this desire that comes up in the mind of, okay, I want to have a child. And so once that mental desire comes up of, I want to have a child, it doesn't actually always happen quickly, and it's not guaranteed. Women get, all sorts of responses to this on their journey. And, certainly women I think it's no secret that women are starting having children much later in life. And for whatever cultural reasons that has happened, and that's causing them to miss the peak fertility windows. And then when they do decide to become pregnant, they'll experience a lot of challenges. But the fertility problem is at its root a deep neglect of the feminine on a cultural level. I don't think women have fully come to grips with the unique challenges that they're dealing with, that their grandmothers and maybe even their mothers didn't have to deal with. So just like one example, over 70% of mothers are working mothers, mostly full-time. So while it's a norm that many women seem to have gotten used to, it's really a lot to ask a woman to work full-time. She might be commuting long hours a day, trying to take care of her own health, trying to raise a child well with all of the other responsibilities, whereas being a mother isn't in and of itself a job. So there's a real lack of space in everyone's lives to start with, even before you think about adding another person into your life. So many women today have created these lifestyles that are extremely stressful, whether it's, their job or their relationships. The stress levels, so many people are having digestive issues, sleep issues, metabolic issues, mood issues. These issues are so common in our culture. We seem to have gotten used to them like they're normal and that they're okay, but they're really key indicators that women and couples, they don't have the kind of clear flowing supported health that would really lead to optimum fertility, or in Ayurveda, what we call ojas is this word that represents strength and immunity and juiciness, protectiveness. So people tend to focus so much on the goal of becoming pregnant that they often forget to create the conditions that will actually give them good health and good fertility. So I would say
Those are some pretty well, and those are things I think people really need to focus on because, I mean, you talk about in your book how fears and blockages and conflict really hold a woman back, and I think a lot of times people don't understand how important that is.
yeah. I mean, the thoughts that we have about whether or not we can have a child, will I be a good mother? Uh, is the timing right? I have something I want to do first. There isn't enough money. He's the wrong guy. My job isn't where I want it to be. I don't think I couldn't be a mother if I was in this job. That's something that every woman right now, that works says, how could I become a mother when I already work so much and I'm already so stressed out? And even there are deep fears. A woman could even be afraid of losing her life in the process because this is a very, transformative event. It's
Yeah,
the most significant event in a woman's life, physically.
yeah, it's pretty intense.
Yeah, maybe other than your own birth and your own death.
Well,
Yeah.
and so when we talk about like fears and blockages and conflict, how do some of these things manifest in a woman's life if she doesn't look to really, make changes?
Yeah, I mean, it's really understanding where the fear and the blockage is coming up. Is it relational or is it biological? Any interpersonal wound that you have, any health issue that you have. So a lot of times I'll see a woman and she'll say she's healthy, but then, okay, the cholesterol's a little high. Oh, this thing came up weird in the blood work. And some of the things that people have gotten used to as being okay are actually signs that are something is not right within for a person. So when you notice that even just the day-to-day stresses of your life are affecting your sleep, are affecting your ability to digest your food, or having a lot of anxiety, these are all signs that you do want to look at your overall life to see if the environment needs to be curated a little bit differently for your own true self to shine through in a way that's really healthy for you, for your unique constitution. So good health and fertility, this requires a person to process all their emotional experiences that may be painful. We will hold toxins in our bodies if we do not process these emotions. And Ayurveda, I think, gives a really clear way of understanding how this happens. Because we have a thing called a dosha, which is a thing. I mean, everyone has always sort of felt something like this exists, but in the English language, there was never a word for it. So I think the doshas actually give people an example of the way our thoughts, emotions, the way that we interact with the environment actually can help us understand how our bodies can become toxic when we don't get the right inputs from the environment, don't process them well. If we don't process these, we cannot get the body into a receptive state. And you need a receptive state because for fertility, creative energy, the fertile energy likes an open vessel. It doesn't like a blocked one. It doesn't like an inflamed one. It doesn't like a tightened one.
So when you talked about doshas, I'd love for you to explain what those are and the part that they play in fertility.
Yeah. Okay. So just think about when you get sad. We've all felt this, and the memory is very potent. When you get sad and you choke your tears back, and you might even just feel that right now sure everybody has a memory like that. You'll feel something caught in your throat when you get sad, and you block it. You say, I can't cry for whatever reason. It's not okay for me to cry in this environment, or I should be tough, or whatever the thought is that sort of influences that particular biological response getting squashed. The social conditioning that does that to us. So that's actually fluid moving in your body in response to the sadness. There are muscles contracting. There's a whole bunch of things happening physiologically when a person cries. And when you trap that energy, including the fluids that maybe we're going to eventually push other fluids out of your eyes, let's say, that those fluids, those moving humors like that, those are examples of doshas. And that's actually a really different view of, I would say, the pop culture understanding of what a dosha is, which is more like a personality test, even though the doshas are related, because there's three main doshas, vata, pitta, and kapha. And, vata representing movement, and in excess can result in degeneration, dryness, roughness, things like that. And pitta, which represents transformation. And if that is present in excess, that's going to result in too much inflammation, redness, anger, irritability, things like that. And then the third dosha is kapha, which when that one gets too high, you're going to have attachments, a very wet body, very sort of mucousy body, slowness, lethargy, things like that. So these humors, so vata is associated with wind. So anytime a person would get dry or gassy or twitchy and things like that, that's an evidence in the body of there being a vata dosha in the body. And evidence of a pitta dosha being in the body would be, those red skin rashes and things like that, or zits, or really super heavy periods, things like that. And kapha being the stability dosha. So when a person has too much stability, the kapha will go up. So we want these doshas. It's not like you don't want vata, you don't want pitta, you don't want kapha. You want them all because they're functional humors in your body. You want them in functional amounts in your body. If you had no air going through your body, you'd be lifeless. If you had no blood in your body, then you couldn't transport oxygen. But yes, if you have so much oxygen being transported all the time, then you could create inflammation and things like that. So everything that comes into contact with our senses, whether it's the food we eat, the music we listen to, the climate we live in, the people around us, they all have certain qualities to them, whether they're heating or cooling or wet or dry, or they're going to move fast through the body or slow through the body, or they're heavy or they're light. These different kind of opposite qualities that will influence the doshas. One sort of tangible example of this is if you eat something salty, and salt is a heating substance, then your anger could go up. Actually, it's could lead to that sense of heat in the body. And then if something were to trigger you, you might become angry more easily, especially if you're outside at noon on a hot summer day. And so all those things are going to raise the hot pitta dosha in the body. So it's really about this convergence of factors that will then play out in the body, because the actual literal definition of dosha means that which can go out of balance.
I really appreciate you taking the time to explain that, because I think there is so many different variations of what that means that people just get very confused. So thank you.
Yeah. It's really easy to, I think when you first learn about something, it's really easy to get this very kind of, high level way of understanding it. And then some depth comes through time and study, which is sustained. So I think the depth comes later.
Okay. Well, I mean, your book really goes into quite a bit, but it really explains it well. And you talk about there are 4 fertility factors, and I'd love for you to share that with us.
Yeah. So this is an example of, I think, the real poetry of Ayurveda, which, interestingly enough, Ayurveda is written in poems. The texts are written in sutras. So all the classical texts, in fact, in India, they'll memorize them and chant them. And like I said earlier, Ayurveda is about learning how to garden, except you're the plant. So it's really about learning the principles of nature and how things grow. And you could think about plants, and this is the metaphor that Ayurveda uses to influence optimum fertility. So the 4 components are seed, season, field, and water. They really are the same principles that apply to planting a garden, maybe any creative endeavor, maybe even if you're starting a business, right? So creating anything. In this case, the seed represents the sperm and the ovum. The season represents the time of the month as the body changes in its cycle, the time of year, because obviously the body changes in response to weather and climate. And then the time of life, because the body changes in each of its stages, as we've all noticed so far about our own bodies. And then the field represents, at this very basic level, the place where a new soul will take form in the physical realm. So the most specific location of field, the Sanskrit word for this is kshetra. So the field, the most specific location of it is the uterus, which is, we know, where the seed is implanted, where the combined egg and sperm, the zygote, would get implanted. And this field, the uterus, the health of the mother, the house that she lives in, the community she lives in, the country she lives in, the larger macrocosm, sort of all affecting this whole body, the sensory input, everything, including what happens in the cosmos, sort of converging to create this certain quality to the field, to the uterus. And then lastly, the water, representing the care of the seeds and the field, because it's water that mixes things together. It brings the hormones, it brings the nutrients, and it keeps things juicy. We need juice for life. So those are the 4 fertility factors: seed, season, field, and water.
So, how does things like diet and exercise all play a part in this?
Yeah. There's basically, you can look at, your body. Ayurveda is a very body-based system, I would say, even though it's mind, body, everything, but it sort of, I would say, primarily works on the relationship of body to environment. We use yoga, say, as the branch of psychology. The yoga philosophies are actually, and I'm a yoga teacher as well. I called myself a retired yoga teacher. So the psychological element comes in through yoga, I would say, in Ayurveda, but we really focus a lot on body. And so if you were going to think about your body as and your health and your fertility as being the outcome of your proper digestion and metabolism, and that depends on what, when, and how you eat, plus what, when, and how you put out energy. And so what I say, eating is the food you put in your mouth. Eating is sensory input. So food, the word for food in Ayurveda is literal food, and it's also other sensory inputs. So each food you take into your body has certain qualities to it that'll drive how your tissues are formed. and the level of each dosha in your body. And so then imbalanced doshas can affect your menstrual cycles. They can impede your conception. The way you metabolize your food, whether it's, whether your digestive fire. So let's think about your enzymes, or what we call in Ayurveda, Agni, the fire god, whether your digestive fire, your ability to process and cook your food is too weak or too strong or just right. That'll dictate a couple pathways for that food to go on. So one pathway is, number one, your body uses the nutrients. Number two, it releases whatever you took in through its waste system. Or three, you get clogged up with improperly digested food. So it's kind of like a halfway point between using it and releasing it. And if these things, so, obviously you either want to use it or you want to get rid of it. But then if you have this third thing happen where you get clogged up because you didn't fully process something, then that can actually redirect your doshas. That will cause disease patterns. So diet plays a huge role in this, and exercise, because your exercise will drive really the demand and the type of food that you actually need. So a lot of times people just don't pay attention to this. If they have a health condition, they'll blame it, their poor health, on a diagnosis of a disease, but it's actually that the opposite is true. A disease process leads to a disease state. And we're all designing this. We all have a hand in this process, whether or not we're consciously aware of it. It's not just what you eat. The whole context matters. So when you ate last, how much you're eating, how the food was prepared, was it cooked? Was it raw? Things like that. Was it combined with anything? Did you go running or do crunches or have sex right after you ate? Because then that's going to disrupt your digestive functioning, stealing the resources that you needed to process. Small dietary nuances matter too. For example, a lot of women don't know that adding even just a certain spice to their food will impact how they digest, and that how they digest their food, because it becomes the tissues and the cells of your body, that affects your fertility.
There's so much that goes into play with that, but I think it's good to talk about it so people become aware of what they need to be mindful of.
Yeah. I mean, you're really a designer of your body. And the question is, are you paying attention to it?
Yeah. I mean, because a lot of times, we kind of are just that we put ourselves really on the back burner. And I think part of the time that we've been going through is really about doing that inward dive and looking inward.
Yeah. It's really easy to get distracted by everything outside of us. And it, for whatever our conditioning is, the way it is now, we don't have rituals built into our lives as a culture for people to go deeply within, to remember, wait, I have a body and my body does this, right? Because our minds are so focused on everything in our environment, all the sensory inputs or thoughts or plans or agendas or actions or desires. And I think that's why yoga and meditation have gotten so big in our culture. And, I had a meditation practice where I meditated every day for 30 minutes for 6 years. And I feel like it was a really kind of drastic thing needed to come back into my own body from being programmed the way that I was. So now, and then how do you move forward from that? Not everybody has time to meditate I certainly don't now that I have a kid. I don't have time to meditate 30 minutes every morning consistently. So it's really finding these moments of great intentional space in your day, which, they don't just happen. You have to remember to create those spaces and to create the kind of attention that will give rise to that.
Well, gosh, I mean, we have touched on so much, Heather, but there's still so much more in your book. Where can our listeners connect with you and learn more about your new book?
Yeah, so my book is called The Ayurvedic Guide to Fertility, and it's being sold on Amazon. It's being sold on Barnes & Noble and the indie bookstores as well. And you can visit my website at www.heathergrzych.com. And let me spell my last name because it's hard. So it's Heather, and then my last name is Grz as in zebra, Y, C as in Charlie, H.com. heathergrzych.com.
Well, thank you, Heather. It has been such a delight to spend this time with you here today.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
Well, what a great time that was, Heather. Thank you so much. Again, if you'd like to connect with Heather, you can at her website, heathergrzych.com, for more information. The Ayurvedic Guide to Fertility is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers. And if you don't see it on the shelf, you can ask for them to order it. And of course, it's available on Kindle. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.